In at number 10, we have the Crystal Wyvern, and you could technically put the normal Wyvern on this list as well, and obviously it's not like I'm hating on the normal Wyverns here, it's just I feel like with the taming method of this creature, and also with the usefulness of something like a Blood Crystal Wyvern, and also just the normal one as well, it just seems a bit counterintuitive to be taming a Wyvern in 24, and obviously in 2024, and not in the year 24, that was 2,000 years ago, but either way, in 2024, it just, to me, it seems a little bit irrational to be taming Wyverns unless you want their specific abilities to do with the fire, lightning, poison, or ice, and there might be some more in DLC cases, and not DLC cases, mod cases and all of that as well, which you may also experience, and also there are the, like, tropical Wyverns on extinction, I think they're called, but I'm pretty sure they're not really tameable, and there's like corrupt Wyverns as well, but they're not tameable. Either way, for 2024, to do with the Crystal Wyverns, so much easier taming method, and the usefulness of the Blood Crystal Wyvern, and also just, again, the normal Crystal Wyvern as well, it seems a bit irrational to me to be taming the normal Wyvern, so that's why the Crystal Wyvern is here instead. Next up, we got the Kronosaurus, and obviously, this is pretty much just the Giga replacement, and essentially it is just a more reliable, more powerful version of the Giga. It has better mobility, which really does play into this being such a great creature to use, as having a carnivore at this size, if it has terrible mobility like the Giga, it's not particularly fun to use, and if you're using it on extinction, it's not quite as bad because that rage buff from the Giga isn't going to matter quite as much, because the Titans are just going to be dealing so much damage anyway. You know, like, they'll just be dead very, very soon after. But still, for every other case, they are much more useful, as they have no blood rage whatsoever, and their stamina is good. Obviously, don't put all the levels in stamina like I did there, but, you know, for the lulz of the B-roll, I guess. And also, on top of that, the tame method is slightly more interesting, and you could say cheaper, because you don't need so many tranks to actually tame one, and there are definitely, they are my go-to big carnivore now, and the Giga just doesn't do it for me anymore. This is just the Giga, but in every way that it was worse, this is just better. Now we got the Rugataa, and I was actually considering like not putting this creature on the list, because I have a very love-hate relationship with this creature. Sometimes I'm really enjoying it, and sometimes I'm like, this thing is way too powerful, why is it in the game? It's ruining people's Ark lives at the moment, especially on ASA actually, because they spawn so much. I do still think that should be changed. They should spawn less. I know they don't spawn enough on the original Ark, and they spawn too much on ASA. Wildcard, just go in the middle. So there's like maybe 5 on a map at one time instead of like 0, or instead of like, it feels like 50. I know there's not 50, but they just, the south is now really dangerous, even more dangerous than it was with all the swamp biomes down there, and even not in the swamp, just outside of it, they just roam around as well, and in the redwoods they'll be there as well. It's just, I know they don't actually spawn in those areas, but they wander off, you know, as Ark creatures do. But, you know, at least their tame method is quite lengthy, so it is quite difficult to get one, but I still don't think that is fully justified, in my opinion, to why they're so OP. These things can literally pick up Rexes, which seems quite insane. Like, the Quetzal could technically pick up Rexes, because you put platform side on it and have a kind of dino cage, but that is kind of more glitchy and buggy than picking up a creature that is just so simple and easy to do. It seems crazy that you can pick up something like a Rex nowadays, but I have to admit, it is a very good creature. In at number 7, we got the RG. This is the old faithful, really. Like, you can never get enough of the RG, and even in 2024, I'm just trying to count back the years now. It's 8 and maybe like 8.5 now. I'm just trying to think of it. It should, yeah, it's around 8.5 years since this thing came out, and it is still in the lists of just the best creatures. The RG was just such a great decision from Wildcard to actually include in the game. It is so good at transporting metal around everywhere, and when paired with an Anki or a Dodic, you can have yourself a serious farming machine is it can pick up both of them, and it can even pick up something in its beak at the same time if you want your dodo friend to go with you. And obviously you can pick up players with it and all of that if you know you want to take your friend with you, or if you just want to kill someone in PvP, if that's your thing. They also have a smithy as a saddle, and on top of that they do have a very nice regen buff, which is actually greatly appreciated, to be honest, because sometimes it's just a pain to just hold down a button and just sit there for like 5 minutes just waiting for your creature to actually eat all of that meat. Obviously you're force feeding it, but it still takes a bit. It's so much quicker with the RG, and that's pretty much why it's here. Let's continue. Next up we got the Snowowl, and although the RG is such a good flyer, I just prefer the Snowowl just in pretty much every way, you could say, apart from obviously the weight and all of that. That is the only thing the RG is really better at, and obviously it can pick up more creatures at once, whereas the Snowowl has a gliding ability unlike the RG, so it isn't really slow, because when movement speed was removed for flyers on general servers, again you can just enable it on single player, or if the server has classic flyers mod enabled, or just the option enabled as a server option, because a lot of people do that, or if you just have the classic flyers mods just on Ark, then you can still have that experience with the RG and have an insanely fast one. But still, for the vast majority of people, you're going to be stuck with default RG speed, and with this thing, like, you have more speed, and you also do have a kind of radar ability, which it's not really a radar, it's like a heat-seeking, it's a heat vision ability, really, isn't it? I'm being a bit dumb. It's like having a thermal camera on your face, which can be useful for finding creatures and also finding people in a PvP scenario. They can also heal creatures, which is probably their main use, and makes them a lot more useful than a Daedon, unless actually for classic boss cases, because obviously you can't take flyers into boss fights in classic terms for like all the bosses on the island and Ragnarok and the center and all of that. Again, Scorched Earth, I know, doesn't follow that rule because you have wyverns, but you can't bring these things in. They didn't even exist at the time, but they're not allowed into it. But still, for most cases of healing up creatures, it is extremely useful. And although not as fast as something like a Managama, in my opinion, they are much more useful with their owl pellets as well. Just the loot you can get from Gatchas is insane. In at number 5, we have got the Mwing, and this creature had to be here. It is my favourite travel mount, pretty much. And although, actually no, it has to be. This is my favourite travel mount. But obviously, travelling isn't all you do in Ark, and in my opinion, it's pretty much the fastest creature out there that you can really get. Yes, in some terrains it doesn't do the best because they're really flat and gliders don't really work, but I find compared to the Rock Drake it does a lot better in most scenarios, so I really do have to credit it for that, and also for its breeding capabilities as well. This thing is great as that portable feeding trough, and it can even steal baby enemy creatures in its saddle if you want, and they're yours now. That's nice. And you also can put any baby or juvenile or adolescent creature in there. So that Bronto is just going to turn to the size of a dodo, because that makes sense. And also on top of that, they can gather berries as well. But just wildcard, this animation is slightly disturbing. Does anyone else think that? Imagine if, I'm sure it's kind of somehow more creepier at a lower resolution because then it's blurrier. I don't really know what I'm saying anymore. The Mwing's in at number 5. Next up, we got the Shadowmane, and this creature had to be here. And again, if you look back at the list that I did yesterday, I put the Deinonychus above the Shadowmane, but in this one, no, other way around. I put the Shadowmane above the Deinonychus, but in this one, I'm putting the Deinonychus above the Shadowmane because it's next up on the list. Spoilers, but I just think in general for most people, the Deinonychus is a better creature to go with because it's more accessible and its tame method isn't an absolute pain. But this is still, for me at the moment, probably, I might have a slight preference for it, but it always differs, and it's such a fine line for me. It really depends what I'm doing at the time, and right now I'm not really playing a lot of like Ark in a goal to finish a map, so I'm just kind of casually doing stuff, and the Shadowmane's really good for that. It's a really great travelling mount, but also really great for bosses and It's got great maneuverability. That was very hard to say for me for some reason. And it also does a lot of damage, and it can charge up its damage, and it can go invisible, and it has pack buffs, and it has the hydration buff. It has everything. It's a great creature. And like I said, next up, we've got the Deinonychus. This creature had to be here. And again, for most people, not for me at the moment, because I'm playing really casually, but if your goal is to actually complete the maps on Ark, this is going to be a much better creature, as it can inflict bleed damage onto boss creatures, and it is significantly easier to tame. Its saddle was unlocked at a lower level, and also it spawns with Valguero and not Gen 2, so it's not an absolute pain. Not sure if the Shadowmane spawns on Fjorda, because it might, but it also might not. Either way, I know for certain this is going to be a definite accessible creature as it spawns on a free DLC map, but I'm iffy. I don't really study a lot of new maps because I don't generally play a lot of them. I probably should at some point, but I don't. I just don't. But at least I know with this thing, you're going to get a really great creature, and pretty much everyone can access it. And obviously they have the pack buff, no hydration buff like the Shadowmane, but they also don't take full damage, and they can parkour around the map and grip onto walls and surfaces, which the Shadowmane can't do. So they're kind of like a Thyla Shadowmane hybrid that's allowed into bosses, and they are really OP for that task. And pretty good travel mounts as well, just in the general world. But right now I'm kind of just preferring the Shadowmane because it's a bit more casual, but my opinions do change a lot, like I've said. In at number 2 is the Bloodstalker, and this may come as a surprising one for you, but I urge you, if you haven't already and you have access to a map where the Bloodstalker spawns on, which I'm pretty sure is only Gen 1 and Gen 2, I don't think they spawn on Fjorda. I'm pretty confident of that, but who knows? Fjorda is a pretty weird map. I should really learn what creatures are on Fjorda. I'm going to check after this video actually, so I will never have to keep saying these things over and over again. But why is the Bloodstalker so good for me? It is my preferred underwater creature, and at the moment I'm spending a lot of time in the ocean for once in Ark because I'm actually enjoying it. I'm just exploring, and like, I don't know, it's kind of like I'm playing Ark for the first time again, because I'm just exploring areas of the map that I've never been to before, because I've never really explored the oceans in all of my time playing Ark. And now with this creature, I've only really got into it over the past couple of weeks fully. But when Gen 1 came out, I knew it was such a great underwater creature, but I never really used it on any of the maps apart from Gen 1. I used it in the ocean biome on that map, but the ocean biome on that map is particularly cruel. But on some other maps, it is so nice just to go around in the water with this creature. And I'm actually having a lot of enjoyment exploring the underwater zones of Ark. And if that's your thing as well, then this might be a really nice creature for you. Or if you just end up spending a lot of time underwater in Ark, this can also just be a great creature for you. And it is also just a great travel mount on top of everything as well. So, you know, that's another reason to go for it too. And in at number 1 is the Desmodus. And I have to put this creature here, okay? This creature has Sanguine Elixir, which is an absolute cheat for tames. It's a really nice travel mount with a gliding ability and all of that, like the Snowowl. And on top of that is a blood bag farm. So I can have a great travelling mount that can also be an absolute cheat for taming creatures. It really does just play a huge benefit to me. And right now, in my casual playing, I'm using the Shadowmane, Bloodstalker, and Desmodus, and pretty much nothing else. I used to use the Mwing a lot more, but this is kind of replacing the Mwing a little bit for me at the moment, because, you know, I've used that thing pretty much non-stop now for the past like year or so, like without any other traveling creature in mind, and I felt like switching it up a bit with this creature, and I've been really enjoying it recently. And again, very accessible, spawning on Fjorda, and with all of those abilities, I think it's just one of the most useful, and in my opinion, the best Ark creature in 2024, at least on the 12th of January 2024, which is when I'm recording this. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you enjoyed this one. And as always, comment down below, what is your favourite Ark creature in 2024 right now? And also, did you agree with this list? And I'll see you all later.